Hi everybody. Today I'm going to go into a little bit of a darker topic, but it's dark writ small. It's Tempest in a Teapot stuff, but I thought it would be interesting to walk through. Before I get into that though, I wanted to have a quick shout out to two YouTubers, both of whom identify as INFPs. I think they're both fantastic. One is INFP Older Insights. Her name is Dee, and she just does wonderful little stories about various ideas, topics, historic experiences, and she's just plain nice and fun. The other is a fellow by the name of Vondelpete, who is British and has a lovely dry sense of humor. I've just had, he's given me lots of smiles, and I do have a similar sense of humor, but haven't exercised it on this channel because I think that the sardonic vibe folks might misunderstand or take me seriously on this, so I'm just set up to keep this as dulles and do discussions of things as they come up, more philosophically oriented. So anyway, what this is about is a recent interaction that I had with a person who bears the mantle of INFJ. And the reason I say that will become clearer a little bit later on. I don't want to call out that people are or are not INFJs. It's not my forte to figure this out because we don't share functions. How would I know anyway? So I just want to say there's certain people where you can just tell, and then there are people who identify as INFJs, and, well, fair enough. So anyway, this all started at RadishRaven's channel, over where she shared some concerns that her INFJ friend had said that she tends to caricature people in her descriptions of others. And she had a concern whether or not this is actual fact, and if she does so, what she can do about it, and so on and so forth. Kind of a deeper self-analysis. And I'd originally put together a long response that talked about the nature of language and its limitations, and how when you reduce things to their symbolic representations and then kind of decompress that again, of course you're going to end up distorting and therefore caricaturing descriptions of whatever it is that's being discussed. It's just the nature of language. You can only communicate a very narrow stream of meaning through 60 to 100 words per minute. Anyway, I then figured out nobody cares. And so I dropped 3 or 4 paragraphs of densely written kind of thinking about the topic because it doesn't matter. But there was someone who responded, and who shall remain nameless because in some respects they deserve no more blame than I do for the situation. I was, in a sense, the instigator of this. So there is no at fault here. It's just a matter of layers of misunderstanding that perpetuated. So this other person posted a response to the "Do INFPs caricature others?" and said, well, no, INFJs do not do this, but I had an INFP girlfriend who did do this, and yes, they do these sorts of things, and that's why INFPs behave in these particular ways. To which I responded, thinking it was sort of amusing and self-revelatory, and then we could go into the discussion of the limitations of language. I said, well, look at what you just did. You've just caricatured, or at least distorted, by boiling down what INFJs are all about and what INFPs are all about through discussion of your girlfriend. Then came the response. I think that this person took my response the wrong way, which, fair enough, and so came out swinging. And so the response was word for word, one might say that, but it doesn't mean they're correct. Okay. Are you an INFP? It certainly sounds like you are. All right. With your passive-aggressive spineless comment. I don't know that a comment can be spineless, but I assume it's shorthand to say the commentator is spineless. And then given that my comment was neither outright aggressive nor outright passive, I guess any sort of commentary by its nature would be passive-aggressive. So I guess the subjective idea of my having spinelessness for making that response, I suppose that's a matter of perspective. It could be right. INFJs say what they mean and mean what they say. And that's where I think things are a bit off, because I do think INFJs tend to be more selective in what they choose to say, because they're distilling down to their core meanings, what they're looking to communicate. So I think there's a lot that INFJs don't say. Be that as it may, I'm actually starting to dislike INFPs quite a bit. Well, I'm sorry you have had these negative experiences, but I would say INFPs tend to be quite different from one another. So to paint with a broad brush, again, to caricature might not be the proper response. They, meaning INFPs, cannot take constructive criticism, so they gaslight you instead and avoid accountability. I can't say that we had that interaction, because I don't think that this poster gave me constructive criticism here. And I don't believe that I gaslit or avoided accountability, because there was nothing to be gaslit by or avoid accountability to. So I guess it's just more kind of hyperbolizing about his experiences of INFPs. They, again, meaning INFPs, are good at doing this, though. They twist your words and project everything back onto you. It was not my intent to twist any words. I suppose it was flipping back the poster's words onto themselves, but that was to say, be self-reflective in this. Consider, again, the limitations of language, in that if we speak briefly, if we boil things down to their essence, it, in its nature, removes the complexity of a human being. So for the summary sentence then, he said, they, meaning INFPs, are mean people pretending to be nice, while INFJs are nice people pretending to be mean, which is a nice platitude, but doesn't sound correct. That is, I don't know that I've made pretense to be nice, and I don't know that I am inherently mean either. So these are both, again, interpretations from the other poster. And I also don't know that INFJs pretend to be mean. It seems to me like they tend to be generally nice people all around. One could say, with the exception of this sort of blow-up, which is something I've experienced now a half dozen or more times, based on saying something that I thought was insightful or revelatory, but was taken the wrong way as an attack, and ends up creating this sort of a response. So anyway, the front to back of it is that I don't mean to say, oh, this person has done me wrong by doing this attack. I did start it. I didn't intentionally start it, but I did, by saying, hey, look at yourself. You've just done what you've said other people do, wink, wink. But maybe it can be easily misconstrued. So I think that this is all sort of a way of showing, and I turned around at the end of this to sort of say, look, this goes back to RadishRaven's original point, that she's been told by an INFJ, or someone she believes to be an INFJ, that she's doing this particular thing which is wrong, and so posted a video that's all about what's wrong with me. When this person carrying the mantle of INFJ was trotted out something to say, hey, will you look at this? The response was to say, what's wrong with you? Instead of what's wrong with me. And then what should happen next, if I am an INFP, is that with FE ignoring, it's sort of a kick in the pants, and I go, oh my gosh, I did something wrong. I'm so sorry. FE and me don't get along. But I've come across this a good half dozen times or so, and I get to the point where I kind of say, well, wait a minute here. This is not a place where I necessarily need to apologize for my actions. I think that this is an incorrect assessment and an improper attribution where I had actually made an observation that I believe was correct. And so it's a matter of the poster trying to achieve a certain goal by communicating this. So looking at the whole thing in its entirety, the whole comment, it seems pretty clear that the intent here is not to correct, but to punish or to shame or insult or bring about guilt, because I had initially said something that was taken as an attack. So it's you attack me, I attack you back. If this poster's intent was to be hurtful against me, I can say that was successful. I am hurt by this. It really is something that causes me pain, even if I recognize it as being cynically simply an attack by someone who just doesn't care about my feelings. I do care about this person's feelings, and for that matter, I don't want to identify them, and I do want to say that that person had a misunderstanding, and so the response in this particular way, I think, was way out of line from what was required, or it would have been the wiser choice to say, well, why did you say that? Or, that's not a nice thing to say, at which point we could have a further discussion over this. But that's not what happened. So, looking into this a little bit further, I tried to sort out how does this happen and why does this happen, and why are there people that I identify or I see as INFJs and we get along swimmingly? It's just wonderful. They're lovely people. And then there are these interactions that are very bumpy, let's say. And so first, I'll put in some references with Michael Pierce. One of the things I was looking at was potentially who would an INFP not get along with, or who grates with INFPs. And I think it might be a matter of the 1, 2, and 7, 8 being swapped with each other, meaning that an INFP would have NE and FI as 1, 2, and this other personality type that does grate has NE and FI as 7th and 8th, and leads with TI and SE, which are 7th and 8th for an INFP. That's one way of potentially explaining it. Getting back to Michael Pierce in a moment, I then went over to Renaud Contini, who's a lovely INFJ, or I believe to be an INFJ, and he did a video some time back about INFJ mistypes, where his assumption, or one of the things that he suggested, was that there's a number of INFJ mistypes who are STPs. And I think that might potentially explain that friction, is that it's the same stack as an INFJ, but flipped. So they're looking at logic first, and then SE plus logic to kind of do a blast attack, call to action, using then FE third or fourth as kind of a cudgel to go after someone who they feel has wronged them, without the FI wisdom, or being FI blind or FI demon, that they don't consider the repercussions of their actions and the hurt feelings they're causing. It's just to say, I feel hurt, therefore I will hurt this other person. That's a possible explanation. I should say another explanation could be that I am an ISTJ, And therefore, the 1, 2, 7, 8, if we take the same hypothesis, would mean that they're an INFJ, and it's my FE and NI that are backslot, and my SI and TE that are the INFJs backslot, and that's why we're having this these altercations, possibly. So going back to Michael Pierce, he had a video about revisiting the ESTP type, where he does talk about INFP-ESTP relations, and he just sort of shows like the banging together of it, that they just don't have anything in common, and that can be a problem in those two types trying to communicate with each other. And so those were sort of some of the things I thought might help to understand what's going on here. Again, I don't want to say this person or that other people I've interacted with are not INFJs. It might be that they're exhibiting some STP-like behavior, and that's why this has happened. You couldn't ever type someone on the basis of a comment. So that would be inherently unfair as well. But I did go on over to, there's another feller who identifies as INFJ by the name of Brian On. Brian did talk about this interaction with another person where there was basically, he put down that the other person was communicating poorly, and that was at fault. But the other person communicating poorly to him gave him reason to respond caustically to that poor communication. And he doesn't really say whether or not he ever went back and said, hey, look, sorry for the misunderstanding, but rather comes to the conclusion that when he's confronted by other people that are communicating poorly, it's because they're dumb. I do not want to put that on anybody, because I think that everyone's got interesting things to say. We just have different perspectives, or there's the difficulty of communication in the first place. For example, I do a lot of global stuff, and it just happens that there's the language barrier, there's the cultural barrier. When people speak English, even if they don't do it well, as their second or third or fourth language, it's something to be appreciated. And those people are actually quite smart. It's just that we have to work to the pipeline that we've been given. But going back to this commentary, so all in all, it's more complex. I don't want to make a caricature out of this other person and their particular comment. It's a complex interaction that happens, and that's happened to me in a recurring way. And I'm trying to think of possible ways why this happens. But I can say that this sort of FE assault is something that I've come to recognize well enough that it takes me by surprise. It's still shocking. It's still hurtful. But I've learned no longer to capitulate to it, because I think that that is not, that's what the other person wants when they do this sort of thing. Their intent is to be hurtful. Their intent is to get some sort of surrender out of this. And I think that for that reason, giving way when the other party is being clearly out of line and accusatory, or somewhat out of line and accusatory, is not the correct response. So that's what I've got. Again, sorry for getting kind of heavy here. I'll put the links down in the description to all these various videos, along with some timestamps. And well, again, there are INFJs and those who carry the mantle of INFJs. The ones that I can identify as INFJs are fantastic people. Those who bear the mantle, I don't know what they are or are not. It's not for me to say, but interactions have sometimes been trickier on that front. So that's all I've got for now. I hope you have a good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you may be. Bye for now.